this nice introduction. So indeed, we reviewed a number of studies that have been conducted in low to middle income countries. And these studies revealed several key insights, which I just like to briefly discuss here. So the first key insight for circular agriculture was the notion of to capitalize on natural processes. Many in natural ecosystems, organisms have often properties that are very useful also for, let's say, an agricultural use. And just as an example, you can think about that the ability of leguminous plant species, the ability to fix nitrogen. And there was a nice example of a study in Ethiopia that used acacia trees to not only provide wood for fuel or construction, but also to enrich the soil with nitrogen fixation in combination with erosion control and stimulation of pollinators. And so you see that by including just the key plant species, you can really capitalize on these natural processes that are fostered by these acacia trees. Another example could be, for instance, biocontrol. There are many naturally occurring natural enemies that can control pest populations actually without any additional cost. So if we favor these natural enemies, and then we can benefit from biocontrol services, which are free. The second insight that we found was the use of efficient use of resources. Now, one way to deal with this is to look for model components that have an efficient use of resources. For instance, if we would feed cows, you need a lot of input, you need a lot of feed in order to get a certain amount of protein, of meat. And in a study of Marcel Diecken, he'll tell a little bit more about that. He showed that insects have a very favorable feed conversion. And that means that with a limited amount of input, we can create a high level of high quality protein. We can push it a little bit further by actually to redesign systems. And there was a nice example of an aquaponics systems in Ethiopia, where farmers pioneered rearing fish in tanks, at the same time, and in the same time, establish crops, so that the manure of the fish was actually the fertilizer of the plants. And here you can see that it's a really interesting idea to try to close the nutrient cycle, and that in turn will give you a very efficient use of resources. The third principle that we identified was adding value to waste. And sometimes we say that waste is the new gold, but then you have to find smart ways how you can do this. And there was a study conducted in Ghana where organic waste collection from farmers markets was used, and this was very favorable for the persons who are selling their produce, because they have to pay a certain price for their waste. And if you take out the organic waste, I mean, then they have to pay less money for the garbage. At the same time, this green waste was actually used for composting and could result in a high quality product for farmers to buy. At the same time, this also created jobs for youth. And so this was a nice example of a project that also had a clear social component. But you could also think about using this organic waste maybe for the rearing of insects. So these were some general highlights, and even though these studies were conducted in low to middle income countries, I think that they're quite general. And I think also, for instance, from the Netherlands, we can also still learn about this, and it can be as a source for inspiration. And so with that, I think it was a nice exercise to see that these studies were not focused on circular agriculture, still provided very meaningful insights.
Thank you very much, Felix. I almost forgot to mention that you were actually the co-author and the co-study synthesis study participant of this article. So thank you very much for sharing those insights. Interesting indeed. Just to recapitulate just briefly, so there's 3 key questions basically that we try to address indeed is how can we preserve and enhance our natural resources and what kind of insights came out of that? Is it possible to use resources more efficiently? And the project showed indeed that that was possible in different ways and different setups. And 3, how can we add value to waste? How can waste be actually used as a circular way of addressing depleting resources and used as a nutrient for some